College basketball is back. Can the Florida Gators and Arizona Wildcats give us a show on night one?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Gators or Locked On Wildcats, your first listens of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever in the podcast and on YouTube. I am Braden Olsen with Locked On Gators. Joining me is Leif Thulin of Locked On Wildcats. Florida Gators, Arizona Wildcats face off this Monday night. And Leif, I'm curious, obviously Florida Gators replacing a lot of talent. We'll talk about that. But Arizona also replacing 4 of their 5 leading scorers from last year with just Jaden Bradley back from that group. How do you replace that production this year?
So it's interesting because they did lose a whole lot of veteran presence. They lost a former player of the year in the Pac-12 in Caleb Love, but he was much maligned by much of the media. They lose a few other players that contributed greatly to a Sweet 16 team. And typically you'd say that's a bad thing. But I think there's so much optimism about Arizona this year because they bring in 2 5-star freshmen. And the last time that happened was long ago, and many teams aren't doing that anymore. They're going straight to the transfer portal and getting an established 22-year-old. But I really think Tommy Lloyd made a great point at Media Day saying, you lose players, and most people are trying to pick a proven player. Well, what's wrong with getting a guy who might be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft? And you say, you know what, that player's just still better at basketball. So I think there's a lot of optimism about what's being replaced with whom is coming in. If you look at Koa Pete, that guy is projected top 10. Braden Buries was number 10 in the class. You're going to score a lot of points. And then in terms of what's replaced of people coming back, Mo Krivas, a few years ago, Tommy Lloyd thought was the best center in the Big 12. He got hurt, didn't play last year. So he is replacing Henry Visar in a way, but he actually started last year over Henry Visar. And so you look at that, I think there's less of a replacement in the traditional sense of the word, because I think they're more talented than they were last year. And right now, you're going to score a lot of points. That's what Arizona does. The question marks are just how they're going to do it. They're going to play quickly. They're going to rebound. How are you going to score those points? And that's what's got to coalesce. But I think there's a lot of belief about Arizona that they're more talented than last year's Sweet 16 team.
Yeah, honestly, I'm looking forward to we'll talk about the style in the second segment more, but I am looking forward to that matchup between Arizona and Florida. I feel like it's just going to be up-tempo basketball, a lot of teams just crashing the boards. So really looking forward to that. And Florida, of course, replacing Walter Clayton Jr., Will Richard, Alijah Martin, 3 guys that without them, that magical run that they had last year, I'll call it magical. I don't care what anyone else does. But that magical run from last year doesn't happen. And I think for Florida, the most interesting way that they're trying to replace it is not trying to go, okay, who's our next Walter Clayton Jr. You're not replacing Walter Clayton Jr. with one guy. When we first entered the transfer portal season and transfer portal window, I was thinking of it as you're not replacing Walter Clayton Jr. or Will Richard or Alijah Martin individually. It was Moneyball style. I was like, you're going to have to try to replace them in the aggregate. Great movie, by the way. But it seems like Florida didn't try to do that. They were just like, all right, we're not replacing that kind of production. We're going to have to get this done in different ways. And so I think that bringing in Xavian Lee and Boogie Fland going to be really fun guard play. Thomas Haugh, who I know you're not a big Thomas Haugh fan, right, Leif?
The biggest Thomas Haugh fan.
So watching Thomas Haugh get into the starting lineup as a small forward, that's going to be just really interesting. I think this team is going to have to play differently. And so I think that for people that are looking for who's replacing Walter Clayton Jr., no one. This is going to be a different team. And just for the Florida Gators fans that didn't listen to the last time that we recorded together, which was Locked On Gators in April, May time, can you take your little victory lap now about Thomas Haugh and you being first on him?
Yeah, so Thomas Haugh, I do NBA draft coverage. And so for a long time, I just watched Florida play basketball. I was like, that guy is an NBA player. And so I started tweeting about him, I want to say at the end of the season prior to the Florida championship. And then at the beginning of last season, November, I was like, well, Thomas Haugh might be the best prospect on this team. Thomas Haugh is at least a first-round pick. And if he comes back, he's going to be an All-American, all this stuff. And then when he went off against Texas Tech and everyone was like, you know what, this Thomas Haugh guy's really good. And you had national pundits saying, I've been high on Thomas Haugh, and I dove through their stuff and I was like, 93rd in Sam Vicine's athletic draft. That's 33 picks after the last pick of the draft. So that's not particularly high. So I got a little love from Florida fans, from college basketball fans from that. And I remember we talked about his draft prospects. And I told you, I think he comes back because he's going to get paid a lot to do so. And he's got a chance to be an All-American. I thought it was interesting that Alex Condon was a first-team All-American preseason, and he's another guy I was very high on. I did my own little poll and had him first-team last year in the SEC, and that wasn't the actual official case, but that's just how I felt about him. So the interesting part about Florida, to transition back to this game, is if Thomas Haugh is playing the three and he's a featured player, how does that offense look? It's going to be a lot of inside basketball, but you got to have some sort of space. And the same can be said for Arizona because they're enormous as well. So I'll be very curious to see which team is more adept at knocking down outside shots. And we'll talk about the keys and everything. I don't want to get too ahead, but which team is more adept at knocking down outside shots while still maintaining the glass? Because both these teams are going to be top 10 rebounding teams in the country.
Yeah. Like I said, it's going to be really fun. Stylistically, it's just going to be a war, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I do want to talk about last year, the start of the year, Arizona under Tommy Lloyd started out 0-4 against top 50 teams, ended up going 8-11 versus them over the course of the season. So significantly improved as conference play got underway. But I'm curious if that's maybe a concern with the roster turnover and last year's slow start, if that might be a concern for Arizona fans now, as you start off with, I know they're not ranked the best team in the country, but I am calling old school for this too. If a team won a national championship last year, I'm calling them the best. And so facing the best or one of the best teams in the country.
I mean, certainly you don't see this as a walk in a park by any means for Arizona because Florida is very good. I don't see them as even close to as good as they were last year because I think they were fantastic last year, and I think they have some flaws. But I will say this, Arizona, in the 3 years of Tommy Lloyd prior to last year, they were top 20 in the country in pace. They were 9th the year they were 1 seed. The 2 years that they were a 2 seed, they were 15th and 16th respectively. And last year they were 49th in pace. So I think there was an adjustment period of, hey, we've got the same players. We got a little older. We're playing big. And the bigs didn't run as well. Like Azuolas Tubelis, who is one of the focal points of Tommy Lloyd's first two teams, ran the floor like a deer. And they also had another big. And so you could still rebound and run. This year's team is more poised to do so because Koa Pete can play the four, and he's a fantastic athlete. You can still go even bigger and play two bigs like Awaka and Krivas like they tried in the scrimmage recently. So the Arizona fans, the lineup is malleable. It's not going to be set. Like I said, I think Koa Pete is going to play the four predominantly. But in this matchup, Florida is so enormous that you're going to see players play positions that they may not play too frequently to match up with Florida. But what I will say is I expect this game to be very quickly played, and Florida's not known for slowing it down, but I think Arizona is going to be the faster team in terms of if you look at the year in review in April, and you say, what are the rankings in terms of tempo according to KenPom? I virtually guarantee Arizona's going to play top 20 pace. I think that's going to really help them because when they got slowed down, that's when they've lost in March. That's their biggest bugaboo. And I don't think they're going to make the mistake, especially with the roster composition and the star power they have this year. So I'm not worried about a slow start. They have a very difficult non-conference, as do the Gators. And so the winner of this obviously catapults themselves into a higher level of contention than if they were to lose. But I'm not worried about a slow start for the Gators, for the Wildcats. And I would be more worried for the Gators because they play a very difficult one. But their brand of basketball has to change because they played through Walter Clayton and Alex Condon last year. There's no Walter Clayton. Boogie Fland played the 2 last year at Arkansas. He's playing the 1 for Florida. And Florida has playing Xavian Lee at the 2, and he played the 1 his entire career at Princeton. So I think there's more changing pieces for the Gators, and that's why I have reason for optimism for Arizona. You still got to execute. Don't get me wrong. But I think there's less continuity for the team that won the championship, even though they returned 3 of the 5 starters, than there is for Arizona returning 4 of 5, or excuse me, replacing 4 of 5.
Yeah, we'll talk about the style because I agree, and I've been very open about my opinion of Florida style needing to change for this year. We'll talk about that when we get back in just a minute. This episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, but it's about redefining it. And there are moments that do more than put points on the board, right? They move crowds, they move culture, they keep moving the game forward. I'm going to be honest. We got Locked On Gators here. We have Locked On Wildcats here with Leif Thulin. And Leif, you are interested in the Utah Jazz. We'll say that. We got the little crossover there. Walter Clayton Jr. is the guy that I'm saying moves the game forward now. We got the crossover. He is the Utah Jazz backup guard. I didn't think that he or Will Richard were going to play as many minutes as they've been playing so far, but Walter Clayton Jr., love you, the best pick of the Utah Jazz draft class. I know that it's not true. I'm gonna say it as if it's true anyway. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators or Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. I am Braden, also with Locked On Gators with Leif Thulin, Locked On Wildcats. And Leif, you mentioned before the break that Florida basically needs to change their style a little bit, that there needs to be some kind of difference because, like we've said, you're not replacing Walter Clayton Jr. That's not happening, especially with how he played last year. Absolutely lights out. And earlier, you mentioned Thomas Haugh playing the 3. Very interested to know what the outside game looks like for Florida there. I do think that Florida is going to be a lot different stylistically this year. I still think that you'll see up-tempo. I do think that you see him bring it down a little bit just because they're so big now with Thomas Haugh at the 3. I'm expecting a more consistent offense around the rim. I need to see it from 3. Honestly, I know we can talk about a bunch of guys and go, okay, well, Thomas Haugh improved his 3-point percentage year over year, and so did Alex Condon. And it's like, okay, well, I need to see it continue to improve because the current numbers of the current roster, not exactly scary from 3 at that point. So I look for them to be more consistent around the rim, but that also means that they're probably going to be less explosive or at least until they find consistent shooters. That kind of scares me a little bit because I do think that if you weren't as explosive as you were last year, you don't make the run that you made. And so for Florida, that's how I view it. And I do think that that might lower their ceiling this year. I think it raises their floor. But stylistically, you're absolutely right. Florida needs to change in order to just fit their current roster. Like you can't go and say, all right, Boogie or Xavian, whichever one, you're Walter Clayton Jr. now. Like that's just not going to work for Florida this year.
I completely agree. And so the Locked On Wildcats listeners have heard me say this, but I'll say this is new for the Gators, but it applies completely. Last year, the Gators and the Wildcats were both top 15 rebounding teams, both offensively and in margin. So that's still going to be the bread and butter for both of these teams. And that's why the battle on the glass is the number one indicator of who's going to win this game. If one team wins by, I won't even say significant, but like a decent margin on the glass, that team should win. But if it's neck and neck, the differentiator is going to be 3-point shooting in this game. And both these teams, I think, might be inept at 3-point shooting overall. Because if Florida doesn't have Walter Clayton Jr. last year, Alijah Martin was an okay 3-point shooter. Will Richard was a good one. And then you went to Condon, not a good one. Chinyelu won't even take him. And as for Arizona, last year you had a couple more, but you now look at the team, and Koa Pete's not going to shoot threes. He may take a few, but he's not going to shoot them well or frequently. Krivas and Awaka, whichever combination of the bigs, not going to shoot them. So it's down to Braden Buries, the 5-star shooting guard, to carry a load. Anthony Del Orso and or Ivan Karchenkov to shoot some threes. And then you look at Jaden Bradley, and you need to take an enormous leap. As for the Gators, just being a total nerd about basketball, if you look into the 3-point shooting of Xavian Lee, he doesn't do it off the catch. His are all off the bounce. And the same can be said for Boogie Fland. So the fact that they're swapping which position that they're playing, Boogie Fland is playing the 1 and Xavian Lee is playing the 2, makes it interesting to me about who's going to shoot threes well, because I'm the biggest Thomas Haugh guy in the world. I love Thomas Haugh. But he's got to shoot a tremendous percentage and a volume that he's never done before to really command the respect from 3. So I think both these teams are going to be bludgeoning each other on the glass. It's going to be who can shoot more free throws, get more offensive rebounds, create fast break points. If you can force turnovers and turn turnovers into touchdowns, to steal that cliche, like that's what's going to win this game, because otherwise one of these teams will have to shoot better than the other from 3. And I think that's going to be the difference maker if they play to a stalemate on the glass. And I'm concerned for Florida in terms of how they shoot, how they create, because both those guys are taking different roles. As for Arizona, they score 56% of their points on offense from 2. And that's including free throws, which is like 20%. So if you do the math on that, that leaves 22% from 3 last year, making just 7.2 threes per game. I think you got to take a leap, but it also, I'm not thinking it's going to be enormous. Like you might make 8 threes this year, and that's 24 points per game. That probably gets you to like 24% of your points, but that's not much. That's not a whole lot. So I really think that this game is going to be very quickly played, but it's going to come down to the finest of margins of who shoots a higher percentage. And both of them might be in the mid-30s, if that, because I don't think either teams are going to shoot particularly well. And both coaches, I assure you, are going to say, you know what? We're going to battle super hard on the glass, and we're going to play really tough interior defense because that's where both teams want to go. So we need someone to hit threes, and we're going to dare the team to do it. So it's such an intriguing stylistic matchup, especially due to the new personnel for Arizona and the personnel that's been in college basketball but are playing such new roles for Florida.
Yeah, I feel like for a football equivalent, this is like 3 yards in a cloud of dust is probably how this is going to wind up, with just these teams trying to shoot threes. And we know Todd Golden is going to live and die by, like, he's always been the type to go, hey, like, and to take the very generic analytic term, just like, hey, like, best shots or catch and shoot threes, around the rim twos. And I do think that when we talk about the turnovers that you mentioned a couple minutes ago, like, I think that might not play in Florida's favor as much as Florida fans, myself included, hope so. I do think that we saw them last year, again, a lot of turnover roster-wise. I think we saw them last year kind of, I'll say, get ahead of themselves a little bit when they're running in transition and got a little sloppy at times. You've also got changes on the coaching staff that could make this a little bit different for Florida. Boogie Fland, someone that I thought did a pretty good job of protecting the basketball last time, which maybe that's why he's moving more to the 1. But I do think that when you increase I guess you increase his touches in general, then obviously that raises the risk of everything, especially once there's more film out on him with this system. But yeah, I'm really curious to just know how that's going to shake up, because it feels like a game that, again, like you mentioned, like both teams are going to want to shoot threes, but this could be a really ugly game between two teams that I think are going to be really good this year, but it feels like it could get ugly, and not in like a beat down way, but in like this might be some hideous basketball at some points in this game.
So what I think is going to happen, and I don't want to play the cards too early because we have another segment, but what I'll tease here is I think this game is going to be played at a very high pace. I'd imagine, if I'm just thinking from a basketball perspective, season long, Arizona, I virtually guarantee will be top 20 in pace. My guess is Florida's top 40 in pace. I think the faster it goes, the more in favor it is to Arizona, because they have more conditioned bodies to play at that pace, because that's how they've played for 4 years under Tommy Lloyd. And then also I would say that Jaden Bradley, the point guard for Arizona, the lone returning starter, he is going to play very quickly. And when he plays quickly, he's better. He's able to get downhill and be more of an offensive load. And he's the key. I did an episode that was essentially saying Jaden Bradley is the most important player for the team, because if he can be good in the half court, we already know he's going to be good on defense and in the transition game. So that's going to happen. So I expect a lot of possessions, poor shooting. But the thing I'll say is, I don't think Arizona will shoot a ton of threes willingly. I think Florida will. I just have questions about their efficiency. So what my expectation is Florida is going to make more threes as long as the percentage is close. That I think is going to play to a neutral. And then on the glass, if one team has more by like 5 rebounds, even, especially if they're on the offensive side, that team's going to win the basketball game. Like, those are my keys. But I do think the thing that I would say for the Arizona fans that you should be optimistic about is Florida's not used to anyone being close to them on the glass. Like last year, they were number 4 in offensive rebounding and number 5 in margin, and they won a championship. And I've told all of them, there's 6 teams in the top 15 last year that were a top 15 margin for rebounding. 3 of them made the Elite 8. 1 won the championship. That's Florida. 1 was Duke. They made it. The other one's Houston. They made it. And then you get to St. Mary's, who was a little different, and Arizona just manhandled them, but did not win the glass. They were able to push pace. So Arizona is going to be able to rebound and then push the pace. So the reason for optimism is Florida's not used to people being big enough to contend with them there. And then they also don't have the ultimate answer of, hey, it's tight. Let's just get a 3 from Walter Clayton Jr. I think there's going to be a lot of looking around, be like, uh-oh, whose turn is it now? And the answer should be Thomas Haugh. It should be Alex Condon. I think it turns into Boogie Fland and Xavian Lee. And that's where I think Arizona has the advantage. They know their defined roles. I'm not sure Florida does yet.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know just what Florida's offense is going to look like, because we know Alex Condon is going to get a ton of touches at the top of the key, and then he's probably going to be a big part of the offense just passing wise. But I'm curious who they're trying to get looks off of those, because you'll see those little like the dribble handoffs, and you'll watch that. But I'm curious who they're trying to get the looks for. Where last year was, for the overwhelming majority of those touches, it was Walter Clayton Jr. And now it's not. So I'm really looking forward to just seeing what that's going to look like. We'll talk about predictions for this game when we get back with Locked On Gators and Locked On Wildcats. This episode of Locked On Gators and Locked On Wildcats is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. I'll tell you, and I've said it before, Locked On Wildcats listeners, you're welcome for my secret sauce. I'll find a guy who's hot from three to start the game, and I'll be like, I'll live bet his threes at that point and just ride the hot hand there. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And it is almost the weekend here. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more time every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it down. Actually, you know what? I'm taking over this one. Not even naming a player here. I am naming the LSU governor for getting Brian Kelly fired, and then also helping the Florida Gators, I think, by saying, hey, I hate how all these coaches are rep by the same agent. So personally, I thank you, because I think that helps Florida's chances with their coaching search. So I thank you very much, Governor. I think his last name's Landry. I don't actually care about him, but I appreciate you there. Just like he delivered for the Florida Gators, surprisingly. DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday that you order. So you stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators and Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. To wrap up this show, I am Brandon Olsen with Leif Thulin, and it's prediction time, and I'll take it right from the top. I'm picking Florida to win this game. Part of it is me being a homer. Part of it is me just saying, hey, I'm going to believe in Todd Golden. And part of it is just I still do believe that this Florida team is going to be really good this year. I think that when you win a national championship, the expectations are, okay, go ahead and do it again. And I will say, I hope that happens. But I think this team, like I've said earlier in the show, higher floor, lower ceiling. I still think they'll win a lot of games. I don't know if they'll make as deep a run in March Madness unless someone really erupts as a great three-point shooter. That's kind of the biggest cause for concern for me, especially when I think about some of the best shooters. I'm like, all right, like I think AJ Brown's gonna be a really good shooter. I don't know what role he's gonna play full time here. Like I don't know how significant minutes he's going to get. CJ Ingram off the bench desperately needs to improve his 3-point jumper for the season in order to be a legitimate big time player. So I look at the starters and I'm like, all right, that's a great starting five. I think there's of course need to have some kind of proven shooter there, but I do think that when I look at the depth, I know you're going to have guys that are going to be able to contribute and play, but I don't know who's going to step up off the bench and be the big time playmaker that Thomas Haugh was last year. Like that was the big thing with Thomas Haugh, was best sixth man in the country last year. I think most people would agree with that. He would come in and completely change the game. And for Florida, like he's in the starting five now, you need some bench juice. And so season wise or season length, that's going to be a concern for me as well. But for game one, I'm picking Florida to win and continue their winning streak from last season.
This is a tight one. I feel like I have a really good game script in terms of the pick and the winner. It's harder. So here's my game script, and then I'll tell you the winner. I think this game is going to be played very quickly. As I said, I think it's going to favor Arizona that's played more quickly. I think Florida will shoot more threes, but I think they'll make about a similar amount. It's going to be like 7 or 8 per team. So the game, that's 24 points, right? Let's say it's 8. So 24. And then if Arizona's going to be more comfortable getting more of their points inside, but it's going to be more difficult to score inside in the half court against a team that's enormous like Florida. So if Arizona can stay on the glass and within 5 rebounds of Florida, I think Arizona wins this game because it's going to be played at their tempo. It's also in Las Vegas. This is practically a home game in a very comfortable gym for Arizona. They'll have more fan support. And I think it really is not fun to be the hunted, and it's a lot more fun to be the hunter. I think Florida has to deal with an expectation that is like, we won the championship, we're great, but you don't have the guys that got you there. The backcourt was arguably the best backcourt in all of college basketball last year with Clayton, Richard, and Martin, and those guys aren't there. The front court is new. The backcourt is new. I'm sorry, the front court is the same, but they are taking new roles. As for Arizona, it's really up to how much can the star freshman do? How good will Koa Pete play? Like how well, I guess I should rephrase this. How good is Koa Pete when tested against Alex Condon and Thomas Haugh? Because he's going to be great throughout the season, but how well can you perform in the first night? How well can Braden Buries use his size advantage against either Xavian Lee or Boogie Fland? Because you kind of know what you're going to get from the other guys. Bradley, I think, has a chance to be the best guard on the floor in this one. So I say all that to say this. If the rebounding's close and the pace is fast, I think Arizona should win this game. So I expect a inefficient by both teams, very quickly paced game that's going to be 75-72. Wildcats win it. And I'll say this. I think Florida is overranked. They're overrated. They're too highly ranked to enter the season because of, like you said, you have the expectation. But if you look at the roster composition, the roster talent is not as high as there are other teams. And Arizona, I think, is too low. I think Arizona's 13th in the poll. Florida's top 5. I think they're both probably around 9 or 10 in my poll. And so I think if you're playing on basically a neutral floor that is actually a home floor for Arizona, and you are the hunter as opposed to the hunted, I like your chances. I'll go Arizona 75-72 over the Gators.
I'm just going to give you like another minute to reiterate that you did like Florida last year, because I know that there's going to be a bunch of Florida Gators fans that heard you say that, that they're not going to be as good this year, that they're overranked, and, just saying overranked just pisses people off. So I'm just going to reiterate, Leif did like Florida last year to win the championship.
It's all over my Twitter. If you guys want to find the receipts, I guaranteed Florida would win in January. So they won me some money in terms of winning bracket pools because I was all in on the Gators. I loved the team. I'm the biggest Thomas Haugh guy in the world. I love Alex Condon. I got to see it to believe it. I think Todd Golden's fantastic. He upset Virginia when Virginia was top 5 in the country, and he took them to a tournament at San Francisco and won. I was like, this coach is a wizard. So I love Todd Golden too. I got to see the backcourt. I'm a huge guards believer. Florida's got the best front court in the country. I'm willing to say that. I just don't think that their guards will coalesce in the way that you need to win a championship. So I think their floor is still pretty high. I just don't see a Final Four team here with guards that are both 6'2", 6'3", and are playing a different position they have played prior in their college careers, and neither shoot well off the ball. So I see warts on this team as opposed to this perfect team that's built the same way. Like everyone thinks they're going to play the same way. They're not going to. They're not going to play the same way. So they have to reinvent themselves, and they need one of those guards to be an All-American. And I don't see it. So I'm going with Arizona in this basically home game. It's going to be a great game, and I can't wait for college basketball as a whole.
Yeah, I think a lot of Florida Gators fans, myself included, are kind of just, and I do this a lot with football as well. With like, I can disagree with how people feel about a certain like wide receiver recruit, but if Brian Hartline at Ohio State's recruiting you, then you're probably pretty good. And then I'll shut up about it. Like I feel like Todd Golden gets that grace from me at this point of why I'm like, look, I don't expect him to win a national championship, but like when Todd Golden has done what he's done in the portal, I think a lot of people question some moves that he's made at different times. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work, and he's made it work. And so I do think that for me and a lot of Florida Gators fans, we go, all right, like we call him Portal God Todd for a reason, right? Like Todd Golden has earned you may disagree, but shut up. Like he's earned that, at least like from, again, myself, we agree here with Florida. Like I don't know what they're going to be. I think that they're going to be, like I said, more consistent, less explosive. And I think that's not a great thing. Honestly, I think that's not a great thing from Florida when we talk about national championship aspirations. But Leif, we had a game on Monday night. We've got basketball back, meaningful basketball back on Monday night.
Can't wait. Like it's my Christmas right now.
For Locked On Wildcats and Locked On Gators, I'm Braden Olsen. This is Leif Thulin. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, wherever it's in the podcast and on YouTube. And we'll see you all next time, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.